nutrition updates for school lunch, foods you didn't know you could freeze, and is there hope for the honeybees? For February 1st, 2012, this is Food News Today. Good morning. Food News Today is sponsored by Conagra Foods, who shares with me the desire to provide the most current, interesting, and unbiased food news. Today is National Baked Alaska Day. National Baked Alaska Day? Do we really think about baking Alaska? Who came up with that name anyway? And by the way, today is the feast of St. Bridget in Ireland, patron of cattle, chicken farmers, and dairy maids. And by the way, have I mentioned my grandfather was a dairy farmer? Yes, 100 times. But he's not from Ireland, so that's why it's totally useless. It was just over a year ago that President Obama signed into law the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. This act adds $3.2 billion to the budget and reauthorized child nutrition programs for 5 years. Last week, First Lady Michelle Obama and Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack announced what Vilsack calls a historic opportunity to improve the quality and quantity of the school meal programs. And change there is. Highlights of the 280-page report include lowering calories and sodium in all food served, more fruits and vegetables, all grains to be rich in whole grains within 2 years, removing all trans fats, and that chocolate milk be fat-free. Compliance must begin by July 1st, 2012. Now, according to Diane Pratt-Heavner of the School Nutrition Association, which represents over 55,000 school nutrition professionals, a lot of these schools have already implemented many of these improvements. After Wednesday's announcement, Pratt said, and I quote, "These new nutrition standards are great news for our kids. They will help school nutrition professionals build on their efforts to offer more fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and low-sodium entrees in our school cafeterias." Some of the additional changes to school lunch: fruits will now be offered as a separate food component at lunch every day. The variety of vegetables will be increased to include dark green, orange, and legumes. The proposed limit on starchy vegetables was removed. Meat and/or meat alternatives must be offered daily at both lunch and breakfast. Saturated fat is now limited to less than 10% of total calories for the week, and trans fats are banned. Reducing sodium content is a key objective of the rule. Currently, USDA reports that the average sodium content for a school lunch is high, in excess of 1,400 milligrams, and sets out a gradual reduction by age of student over the next 10 years, with the result being a reduction of between 25 and 50%. In fact, Conagra Foods, our sponsor of this program, back in 2007 announced their sodium reduction across all their foods, and they are a leader. Have you ever walked by an amazing sale in the supermarket and wondered if you could buy in bulk and freeze what you didn't need immediately? Well, there are lots of surprising foods that you can freeze. And if saving money isn't your motivation, freezing can also help effectively store and portion meals so that you won't overindulge. First up, nuts, seeds, and even grains. If you like to keep a variety on hand for snacking and cooking, the freezer is the best place to be. Nuts, especially unshelled, can quickly go rancid thanks to their healthy mono and polyunsaturated fats. Heat, moisture, and light can cause nuts to spoil. Be sure to store them in a plastic airtight container. Shelled nuts last for up to 8 months in the freezer. And hey, you're nuts if you don't freeze nuts. Need to get some hors d'oeuvres ready for a last-minute dinner party? Well, thankfully, you froze your block cheese. Yes, that's right. When you see blocks of cheese on sale, stock up. They can be frozen in the original unwrapped packaging, but then wrap it tightly in plastic wrap or heavy-duty aluminum foil as well. Soft cheese and cheesy spreads will only last about 1 month frozen, so it's worth it to freeze the harder cheeses, which will last up to 6. Just remember to thaw the cheese in the refrigerator overnight. Freezing herbs at their freshest is a great way to store moist herbs to retain flavor. Wash and dry the herbs and divide them into portions. Then place in the freezer on a baking sheet to set. Once frozen solid, remove the herbs, place them in an airtight plastic bag, and pop them back into the freezer until you're ready to use. With some heavy-duty aluminum foil, plastic bags, and plastic wrap, you can store some of the essential everyday food for months. Remember to label everything with the date and what's inside, and clean out your refrigerator and your freezer several times a year. There's been trouble in honeybee paradise for years now, a phenomenon known as colony collapse disorder, categorized by massive bee die-offs and the queen bee abandoning the hive. A new study by Purdue University seems to confirm what environmentalists have long suspected, that the massive bee die-offs are linked to pesticides. Research indicates that the pesticide neonicotinoid uses a synthetic derivative of nicotine. These chemicals are applied as a coating to corn and soybean seeds prior to planting. The scientists also identified unsuspected methods by which bees are exposed to the pesticide. Mechanical seed planters blow off a powdery waste as they move through the fields. The talc can contain up to, get this, 700,000 times the bee's lethal dosage so that foraging bees come into contact and are killed. The United States is losing about 1/3 of its honeybee hives every year, according to Greg Hunt, a Purdue professor, who went on to say that no one factor is to blame, though scientists believe that others, such as mites and insecticides, are all working against the bees. And the bees are important for pollinating food crops and wild plants. Let's hope that the scientists can figure out something soon, as protecting bees is a huge benefit to our food system, since most fruit, nut, and vegetable crop plants depend upon the honeybees for pollination. In fact, it was Albert Einstein who once predicted that 10 years after the bees disappear, so does the humans. So what are your thoughts on today's stories? Any comments on the new nutritional guidelines that you'd like to share? What do you want to see in your kids' school lunch? And do you freeze your foods, or do you have other ways to store them that are beneficial? Let me know what's on your food mind. Thanks for watching.